I'm singing, follow me, everything is alright. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. And if you want to leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me.
All right, welcome to Get on the Ark, and we're here with Dr. Mark Sherwood, and I'm honored really to have you here and to hear your story, and just hearing about you initially. I heard about you on watching Amanda Grace, and then I got to meet you at the Reawaken America tours, and what you and your wife do and what you're doing is amazing, and I'd love to hear how it all started. Where did it came from? So the floor
Well,
is yours, Mark.
Darren, I really appreciate you having me, and I'm honored to be here. I appreciate what you're doing, and I love the title. Get on the ark. There's no question because I think that probably is a good lead in for where we are right now and what kind of our story. We've been trying to get people out of the Babylonian culture and danger, if you will, imprisonment, bondage for a long time, and some people listen, and many don't. And that's I sometimes feel like Moses and Noah combined. I don't know, but um, for me, a little bit of a just a super brief background. I think people need to know where you come from. Wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and nor was my wife. I'll begin with noting my wife as I always do. She's a great, amazing human being. She's my best friend. Truly, God brought us together, and I like to introduce her and talk about her more than just my spare rib. She's my perfectly glazed, braised, smoking hot prime rib. So people usually like that.
Yeah.
That's Michelle, my queen, my wife, and without her, I wouldn't be anything I am. There's no way. So I want to make sure to give credit where credit's due in that. But way back when I was an adopted kid, my parents, they did raise me in a Christian home and made sure, I've used the old uh, colloquialism phrase before. The only drug problem I had was being drugged to church all the time, right? And so I was, and I came to know the Lord at 8 years old. And, again, the journey of life and faith is, I've learned a lot in my 60 years on earth, and 52 knowing who God is. He's a forgiving God. He's not a God of religion. He's a God of grace. He has expectation like any good father has. And his expectation and his viewpoints don't really match the world's. It's just different. It's a kingdom mindset. And I think people need to know that, And so early on, God put birth, dreams and goals and visions in my life. And as an only adopted kid, I had visions to be a professional baseball player. Who doesn't as a kid in those days, right? And was finally able, wasn't the most talented kid on the team or in my school, but I was able to work my way literally up until I was able to play professionally over in Australia. So dream accomplished. Good job, Lord. And so that was fun. And I learned a lot because I was over on the other side of the world, by myself, with no cell phone, no internet, no computer, none of that stuff that we have today. And so very interesting time, no less. And of course I had to kind of grow up fast, Darren, I mean, most people have those moments in life. And then from there, I kind of eventually came back, career was over, started a new one with the police department in Tulsa, Oklahoma, spent 24 years there. And during that time there, I was able to kind of get into lifting and bodybuilding and that kind of stuff, and was on the SWAT team for 10 years. And I traveled around the world with the power team. You remember those guys with the bricks and all that stuff? Did that for 12 years. And, eventually the Lord just kind of directed us to a different area, and went back to school and became a traditional naturopathic doctor, and teamed up with my wife, Dr. Michelle, started the Functional Medical Institute. Um, 5 best-selling books and 5 movies later, and bunches and bunches of people healed. To God be all the glory. Here we are.
Wow, that's so. How did you and Michelle meet?
Yeah, interesting. My life up until the time I met Michelle was just, it seemed to be full of victories, but it also had traumas. A lot of people don't understand, what makes you is what didn't break you. Sometimes, it's like the problems we go through in life, is crazy. So, at the time in my life that I met Michelle, I'd been through overcoming the suicide of my mother back in 2002, and that was challenging. And then I went through a horrific divorce. Ended up being a single father, sole custodial father of a 2, 4, and a 6-year-old child. And I didn't know what I was doing, man. I had no absolute clue at all. And frankly, Darren, I'd sworn off women. I'm like, I'm good, man. I don't want to go back through that mess again. And that doesn't mean, that I have a propensity for males. That's not what I meant by that. It's just like, I had to learn. And I think this was a good lesson because there was a time in my life where I got so down and so tired of just fighting that battle with no direction. I mean, I remember this so clear. I was sitting in my living room one day and I was by myself, of course, because I wasn't really trusting to anybody and doing my very best, working 3 jobs and just trying to do my best to be a dad and, still serve God and still really understand what was happening. And I remember I was sitting on the carpet floor, leaning against the wall. And I said, I don't remember if it was inaudibly to myself or out loud, but I said, God, why is this happening to me? And, I didn't think I'd get a reply, but that time I did. And it was a unique reply. And I don't know if it was audible or just, the internal language, but the reply I got was shocking. He said, Mark, who do you think you are? Look what they did to my son. And I was like, whoa, we get to feeling sorry for ourselves sometimes, and wondering why things happen as they happen. And that was kind of another pivotal moment in my life where, I began to think, you know what? I don't really want to be alone, but I can do this because I do have a God who really loves me, bottom line. And so I go on a few years later after that and just kind of think, well, I guess I'm going to be alone, right? I'm good, And then by the time my youngest had gotten to be a junior in high school, I had transitioned from the police department, gone into, back to school. And I was working a job that I was educating physicians on supplementation and nutrition and all that stuff. So that was my job to travel around and go from clinic to clinic. And I met Michelle, who was running a clinic. She just opened it up and it had only been like there a couple of months. And, something struck me about her that was just, unique. I mean, how you meet those people in your life, you're like, hey, that's a memorable person. And you really don't know why. And so, I just kind of chalked it up and went on about my business. But during that initial meeting that we had, it was all about business. But at the end of the meeting, something crazy happened. This is really one of those things. We have a movie about this too. If people want to watch it, it's called The Prayer List. It's out there on PureFlix and on Amazon. But at the end of this meeting, I stuck my hand out, because chivalry's not dead unless you kill it, men, so listen to that. Right. So I said, thank you, Dr. Neal, which is her maiden name, for your time. And she shook my hand back and Darren, we couldn't let go. It was an odd, really weird, surreal moment. I mean, I couldn't let go. And it was like, there were people around there and I felt like really uncomfortable and frankly, kind of stupid. But then I hear that voice inside of me then, say, would you have some courage, please, man? And so I went ahead and asked her to go out to meet me for dinner. And she did. I couldn't believe it. So we exchanged contact numbers and truly we haven't really been apart a day since. It was crazy. I think we both knew within a couple months that we really were in love with each other and we sort of dated or courted for about a year and then got married. And that was January the 1st of 2015. We finally married. And boy, I tell you, through thick and the thin, through everything we've been through, that lady has been with me every step of the way. I mean, every step of the way. And if that's not, God smiling on a person, I don't know what is.
Oh, that's great. So what led you? I mean, obviously being a successful bodybuilder and a world, a champion in most of the sports and athletics that you've done. I mean, to be on the power team, I mean, that's awesome. What led you to nutrition? You know, which I think is the best healthcare we can have is
Yeah.
how we feed our bodies. Um, you know, what sent you down that path? And you know, I know you have
Yeah.
amazing products, and you've got a lot of great books on the subject. So, and your most recent book, The Narrow Road.
Hmm. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and how you got in
Well,
that.
first, the narrow road. That's really a devotional book where my wife each and I have written different devotionals, like one day reads, and we just pour our heart out in that. I think we just kind of allowed people into our lives. There's 140 odd devotionals there. Almost one for every 2 days of the year, and there's little spaces you can write. So it just kind of really centered on the struggles, the victories, the things we go through in life, and I think people really enjoy that one. I mean, it's one that we really poured, allowed people into our hearts and minds and into our home, really, if you will. But interestingly enough, a lot of things sort of intersected, to lead us where we are right now. And I think that it was several things. Number one, obviously, when you get into the lifting and bodybuilding stuff, people naturally gravitate to you to ask questions about fitness, lifting, and nutrition. So that was one angle. So I tried to learn as much as I could to help myself there and to help other people. And then on the power team, there was an occurrence that kind of freaked me out, and this is kind of behind the scenes. During
Yeah,
those days, I was kind of your token bodybuilder of the group. Everybody else was these gigantic football players that
right,
sort of towered over me, but I could run faster and still do the things they could do, and some of them even better because I was a little bit faster and a little more powerful.
right,
But there was a person. We were eating dinner one day there, and it was a terrible meal. Thinking back, it was horrible food, just terrible, unhealthy food. Not bad cooks, but just terrible food.
right,
And the guy was praying the unhealthiness out of it. I mean, literally out loud. I'm gonna, Lord, take the unhealthiness out of this food. And that kind of like stuck with me, like sort of one of those things that sticks in your craw. You're like,
right,
man, is that I don't get that. I mean, maybe I'm missing something. So I just began to ponder on that, and I began to watch because I tried to eat healthy, and some people didn't, and I began to kind of watch the differences in the way people's lives turned out. So that was number two, and then number three, when I was on the police department, I'd kind of progressed up the ranks and was eventually transferred to the police academy where through a series of events, I was eventually in charge of recruiting, training, development, the Spanish outreach program and recruiting as well, and also the wellness program that didn't exist. So that got me into this. That was kind of that trifecta that led me down to the road. I got to figure this out because I had no guidance at all. And so I started traveling around to police departments and taking every class I could. And that kind of opened the door to education, of course. And the statistic of police officers that I found, which is quite shocking because it still is true today, more or less, this is true across the nation, city, state, county. The average 20-year male retired police officer lives to 66 years of age. And I thought to myself, something's wrong with that. And so I went on a mission, Darren, to figure out why. Why was that? Is it just shift work? Is it caffeine? What is that? So that got me really down the pathway to sort of initially trying to figure out what was going on there and what caused it. Then I realized that the same things that causes that are causing the calamity in mankind. And
right,
so it just kind of was this thing that kind of welled up in me. And from a person that had a mission to serve and protect, it was now I'm going to serve and protect just from a larger audience. And so it was a natural transition. It seems like two different things, police work and what I'm doing now, but really it's still about serving people and protecting them.
wow. So along this journey, okay, so then 2020 happens,
Mhm.
and you know, we have this pandemic or this shutdown, and
Yeah.
and this shift, and you know, I know you're in Tulsa, right?
Yes.
So did you already know Clay Clark, or what brought you into the Reawaken America tour?
Well, Clay and I knew of each other for a while. And then during the pandemic, the initial stages of it, we got more acquainted because I saw a guy who was kind of outwardly coming against the ideals behind that. And of course, my wife and I, we never, batted an eye. We never closed the clinic, didn't care. I remember we were flying back from an event in Hawaii, and a long flight, and
Yeah.
trying to get back to where we were about March of 2020. And it was really odd because I remember having this conversation with her. We were like, what is this? Is this real? Are people going to die? What I mean? But we realized that it was driven by fear. And at that point in time, I was waiting on any politician, any doctor, any pastor, matter of fact, to just give a message of hope. And instead, I heard a bunch of just pervasive messages of fear, every one of them. And that just another moment in time, it stuck in my craw. And I kind of got a little irate about it, not really other people, but I got irate that what was happening to our world. And so we stepped up and we developed a strategy early on to deal with it. And then Clay and I's paths intersected, and I invited him, kind of to be on a podcast show that I had. But when we scheduled it, I didn't know that he was actually inviting me to his. So we actually ended up doing his at that time. And that was probably in April of 2020. And I've been on his show once a week for nearly almost 3 years now, 4 years almost.
Wow.
And we just kept it going. And then eventually one day, and this is probably, I don't know, early on in 2021, he calls me up one day. He says, man, I need you. I'm thinking, what's going on? And he said, we're going to do an event at his place of business. That he said there was a patio out there. And he goes, we're going to have praise and worship. We're not going to wear a mask. We're going to have a couple speakers, and we're just going to dare them. And I said, I'm in, just like that. So we did that, and 400 people showed up. Of course, God was there, and what an amazing event. I think there was, let's see, who was all there? Sean Foyt was there, actually, and I was there, and a couple other docs were there. Dr. Bartlett was there. You might have heard of him.
Yeah.
And we had a really wonderful event. And after that, of course, pushback happened across the city here. And after that, I get another call from Clay about a month later. He goes, "Want to do it again?" And I said, "Sure." And so the tickets started going out for the same event, same place, but 400 requests of tickets swelled to 4,000 requests of tickets. So then he had to find a venue. And so that opened up the door for the very first venue was at Rhema Bible Church in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And that was the beginning of the Reawaken Tour. And Clay and I have become really good friends since then. And, what an amazing act of obedience. People can like him or love him, whatever, but anybody that would be obedient to a call to allow God to use them in such a way like that is pretty amazing and remarkable to me.
And people ask me about the Reawaken America tour all the time, and the perception of what it is. And then when you go to it and you're like, wow, this is a movement of God. It is just unbelievable and to experience it. And I know there's only one more coming up in June in Detroit.
Right.
And that's going to be amazing.
I think the thing about the Reawaken America tour, people are going to have opinions and perceptions. They did back when Jesus walked the earth too. And look, it's fine. Bottom line is, I can tell people this unequivocally because I've been challenged with this so many times. I just, man, the more you get out there and really stand upon your faith and talk about your faith and talk about God, the more you're going to get criticized. People just need to know that. So that's just part of the journey. And I've learned to kind of deal with that. I don't like it. Who does? And people that say they enjoy that is just, come on, man, really, who enjoys being criticized? But I can tell people unequivocally that Jesus is magnified. The name of the Lord is orated. It's spoken, is acknowledged. And anytime you do that, whether you like the flavor of it, you like the speakers, it's okay, fine. Additionally, there's people that come at it from different angles, and that's fine too. There's different levels of maturity in the body of Christ. There
Yeah.
are adults, there's Christians, and there's children as Christians, and it's okay. That's how we learn from one another. And I think that people should, seriously, if somebody's wondering what it's about, just withhold judgment. It's all good. I'd rather go to a place where God's name is glorified than a place where it's never glorified, like Washington D.C. Compare the two. Um, Washington D.C. and all the politicians there, Darren, they're not openly doing that, right? And there's a problem when you don't acknowledge God. Faith is not present. When you do acknowledge God, faith is present. When you don't acknowledge God, faith not being present, fear comes in. And here we are back to the beginning of the pandemic again, right?
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I'm fortunate. I've got to travel and be all across this country, and I see what God is doing, and there's a movement, and it's a huge movement, not just in the Reawaken America tours, but just everywhere. There's people are coming to God, and it's cool being part of that. And,
it really is. It's a time where people, I think it's a separation of the wheat from the chaff, from the never was or never were to the always have been and always will be. It's the separation of the wide road of the narrow road, which is one of the inspirations behind, again, our latest book for that very reason. It's like, man, when I look at Matthew 7, 13, and 14, where that narrow road is mentioned, right? People can look that up. It clearly gives us the idea that many will be on the wide road and few will be on the narrow road, which no matter how you slice that, no matter what interpretation you look at, it seems to be that more are on the wide road heading to separation from God eternally than are on the narrow road walking with God throughout eternity. And so that to me is a great burden. It's a great concern. And I know there's people out there, even probably that we know, that want to see people, their head on a silver platter for what they've done to this country. I get all that.
Yeah.
But let's remember the two thieves on the cross. One, they both acknowledged being there for the right reasons. They had committed crimes. And by the way, Jesus didn't pardon the death penalty, just FYI for people, right? They were rightly convicted for crimes. One, in his very last breath, acknowledged who Jesus was. No, he didn't pray a sinner's prayer and all that stuff. He acknowledged who Jesus was. He received the forgiveness that Jesus could offer. And he had, therefore, an eternal life with him from the moment of death onward. The other one did the opposite. And so it's that simple. It's really about just really understanding who Jesus is. And that can't happen through a great speech. That happens through an awareness that happens and changes your heart, and that's the whole thing that we've got to get into our minds, that we can be religious all we want, but unless we have a regenerated or changed heart, religion is man's best and failed attempt to reach God.
Right. Well, it's interesting. We're taught, when we're real young, don't talk about sex, politics, or religion.
I know.
And really, those are the things we should 100% talk about, and the truth about. And a lot of people, they seek God, but they're not, maybe afraid to talk about Jesus. And I was like that, and it was back in 2020, I had Jesus just showed up in my life and grabbed me and took me on this adventure, and it hasn't stopped. So I never thought I would ever do this, be talking about it, especially not on a public platform. But I want to talk about him all the time. I love talking about God. I love what he does in this country. But for you, if you had a message for someone out there that is seeking, or what steps or what guidance would you give them?
Well, first of all, if you're seeking, that's the first place to start. Look for truth. Seek God out. Test him in that. A lot of times we tend to look at mankind as sort of our marker or our benchmark or our example of whatever. And frankly, we should be, Darren, as men of God, we should be examples, but we can let people down too. I tell people out there, man, drop the religion, um, drop the idea of the fear of hell. Don't do that,
Yeah.
but seek out the idea and ask God, look, are you real? Is Jesus real? Is who he says he is? And is there a heaven? And show me. I mean, it's that simple, right? It's that simple. And then when you seek him, that's an inquisitive mind. When you have an inquisition or ask questions, it opens the door to receive answers. And then God gives answers. Now, sometimes he speaks to people through podcasts, like Get on the Ark.
Right on.
Sometimes he speaks to people through his word, the Bible. Sometimes he speaks to people through circumstances. And sometimes he speaks to people through sinful people. Think about that for a moment.
Right.
And so, all that said, I think people just seek God with all their heart, you know? And when they find him, he'll show you where he is and he'll show you how to have a relationship with him. We got to knock off the formulas because it's really not changing anything. Sounds kind of crazy, a guy that's been in the evangelistic movement for a long time. But I want to see lives changed to represent a kingdom that's not of this world. And to tag a little bit on, to put a bow on that answer, the very title of this broadcast, Get on the Ark, really speaks to me because here's a guy, Noah, who was preaching a message that everybody thought he was a nut. They thought he was crazy. They ridiculed him, they condemned him. And the same thing happened to Jesus. But that ark represents a place of safety. It may not make sense to the world. Most of the time it won't. But trust me, and I know I can trust you, Darren, that the place of safety, being that ark, that place where God created for us, is the place we need to be. And I think that the message is that people really need to consider wherever you are in the world. I don't care what you believe now. It really doesn't matter to me. I'm good and I love you anyway.
Right.
Just seek out truth and see what God does at that point.
Wow. Well, I think that's great, and thank you. And if so, people ask, they're like, you've got some great products, nutrition products, and you have a lot of wealth of books and movies. So how do we, where do we go to find all this? Where do we go to get this?
Well, I appreciate this so much, Darren, and thank you for asking. People can go to Sherwood.tv, and on that side is kind of all the things you mentioned. We got all of the links and things to get what we do, and all. There's a bunch of free resources. A lot of those movies are out there for free right now on Amazon and PureFlix. You can get them.
Yeah.
The books, they're all #1 bestsellers on Amazon. So get those and fill your mind and heart up with those. A lot of stuff that we've created that really help out with the food, right? So example, we created Kingdom Fuel, which is a whole meal product in a powder form. It's not just a protein. It's got 20 grams of that, but it's got greens and reds, fibers, vitamins and minerals. And it's also got this whole meal approach. And get this, it's for $5 or less per meal. And then we come up with these Kingdom Candy. They're meal replacement bars. There's a 200 calories, and they have wonderful things in them. They taste amazing. There's a peanut butter chocolate chip, and there's a salted caramel, and no sugar. So look, your guilt-free bars you can have. Then they came up with Kingdom Cup with K, which is organic mold-free coffee, because most coffee out there is moldy. Who knew that, right?
Yeah.
And coffee is such a cultural thing, and mold is so common today. So let's fix that. And we've got some cereals coming up, Kingdom Crunch, that are coming up here in a few months. And we've got all kinds of little programs and things we do. Like in January, every year we do a 5-day or a 1-week meal replacement challenge. We use Kingdom Pure for that. We put a devotional on there. We come on with 3 videos during that week. So there's all kinds of activities. If people want to work with us, they can. We have clients really everywhere. Beauty of technology, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And thank you to COVID, right?
Yeah.
But we have a free webinar the second Tuesday at least of every month. People can get on there and attend that, ask us questions. If they want to schedule an appointment, they can.
Okay, great. So Sherwood TV.
Sherwood.tv, yes.
Sherwood.tv. Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you, brother.
And you're welcome. My honor.
I love what you're doing, and so I'm assuming you'll be in Detroit in June
Yes,
at
we'll
the
be there.
relay.
Yeah, I think we got. I'll be talking Friday evening. I think just before the Trumps at that one.
Awesome. Well, God bless you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Darren, sounds great. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you.